right now. We're getting into the NCAA Super Regional at Baum Walker and the other Super Regionals, perhaps, and a couple other things going on in college baseball with ESPN analyst Todd Walker. He'll be on the call this weekend on ESPN, on the U, and on the Deuce, and he's with us right here on Halftime. Todd, appreciate your time today. How are you doing?
Great. What's up, guys?
Well, we're fired up. We're fired up. We got people lined up past the hog pen right now. People have been camping out since the end of Monday's game, and everyone's fired up about it. And some people are nervous that Arkansas did not play their best baseball over the weekend in the regional, so they're hoping it doesn't carry over into the super regional. Does that carry over sometimes, or do you think that this is a team that can just sort of put that past them?
I think you can put it past them. I mean, I can only speak from my own experience back at LSU in the early 90s. In 1993, we won the national championship, and back then they did not have super regionals. So we had a regional. Well, first of all, we had the SEC tournament, we had the regional, and then we had Omaha. And in all three tournaments, we lost a game, all three, and we won all three tournaments. So losing a game, looking a little iffy at times, I don't think carries over. I think it's all momentum in that game. You know, like if they get a big 3-run homer in the first inning, then they're going to end up rolling in the first game, you know, that kind of thing. So I think these kids are impressionable, but they have short-term memories.
Yeah. You know, this is such an interesting Arkansas team, and I know you've watched them throughout this season and have certainly called a few of their games. And sometimes I'm not quite sure what to put my finger on as to what I like the most about them. Is it the lineup that can be so tough to pitch to? Is it the fielding, which I think has been the best in the SEC this year? But then when I watch what happened this last weekend and the way Kevin Kopps just basically rose above everybody else, the best thing about this team right now, and it's saying something because they got a lot going for him, is Kevin Kopps. I don't think there's ever been a college pitcher that has had a season quite like this. He's a unicorn, Todd. Nobody's like this.
Yeah, he's the double-double, right? 12 wins and 11 saves. I don't think you'll ever see that again. I mean, that's pretty impressive. What's also impressive is he threw 185 pitches last week, and I don't know the carryover residual, whether or not he's superhuman like he appears to be, or whether or not there's going to be an effect this weekend. We'll see.
Yeah. Do you think this is a lineup, an Arkansas lineup, that can be pitched to with success? You know, we've seen for like maybe 4 or 5 innings at a time, they've been able to get pitched to, but the last few innings it's been really tough, especially for teams that might not have great depth in the bullpen. But do you see this as a team that can be pitched to, or is the depth of the lineup usually something that wears the opponent down?
Well, there's the good and the bad, right? You don't have a 300 hitter like they did in the championship run in 2018. They had a few of them, but elevated fastballs and hanging curveballs, and they'll kill you. So they can be pitched to, but it has to be consistent, low in the zone, ball, preferably a two-seamer with movement low, and on the corners. NC State isn't going to do that, right? Their strength is not on their pitching staff; it's their offense, and so I think you're going to see a lot of big home runs this weekend with Arkansas. But NC State can bash with them. They can hit some homers too. They're very athletic offensively. Can run the bases, and so it's going to be a good battle. I think the edge though on the staff clearly is with Arkansas with the pitching, but NC State can bash with Arkansas for sure.
So part of this story here with this NC State team, Todd, is they're 17-3 on the road, but they've played in front of like legitimately friends and families at most of these parks. Most of the regular season games had 500 people, 750 people. I think they had 2,700 or so at the Love Shack in Ruston, but that's nowhere near the sort of atmosphere. And I love Ruston; they get great atmosphere. You know what it's like at Baum Walker. It's different here. Can that affect this team? Can that affect NC State in a negative way?
Yes, and I think that's why everybody's excited to have the crowds back. It's huge, especially when you get like I played in games where they'd get on me pretty good, with LSU, and of course it affects you. And keep in mind, they're going to only use 5 guys, maybe 6, like you and I talked about with that Kobe Engel kid. But basically, they're going to use 5 pitchers. 3 of them this is their first full season, so they're freshmen. So keep that in mind when you're watching the staff at NC State when they get out there and they get in that crazy atmosphere in Fayetteville. I think the only veteran really guy they're going to use is the opening day starter. I believe they'll throw Reed Johnson against, I assume, Wicklander tomorrow night. Reed Johnson's a fourth-year guy. He's pretty good. But after that, it's all young. And so you couple, young guys with that atmosphere, I'm really interested to see how they react because most of the time it's not good.
Well, what was 1992-93 Todd Walker like when he would get heckled from the outfield at Duty Noble or in the dugout at any of the other parks? I know the SEC was a lot different then, and nowadays some of the players like to play around with the fans. They'll even kind of join in some of that fun. What were you like back then? Did you join in with it, or were you a little more fiery and fight back on them?
No, I learned to play along with it. But my personality was to buck at it and fight back, And so I specifically remember Auburn. They had a pitcher named John Powell that was the national strikeout leader because he was accurate with his fastball, and he threw a fork ball back then, which you didn't see a whole lot of. And that fork ball, if you can execute it, it's the nastiest pitch anybody can throw, other than now this gyro ball that Cops throws. But it was similar. And so I remember at Auburn, I'd strike out and I'd go back, and they were all over me all the time, and it affected me. That's when you asked that question earlier. That's what I think about. Now, when you get to the big leagues and they're doing it, you've learned at that point to let it just roll off, and it's not that big of a deal. But when I was young, it really did affect me, when they got on me specifically.
Todd Walker of the SEC Network and ESPN joining us here on Halftime. Todd, wanted to get your thoughts on Charlie Welch. I mean, we know what Kevin Kopps can bring to the pitching staff, but Charlie Welch coming out of the dugout in those crucial moments as a pinch hitter for this team, he's been absolutely as close to automatic as you can get. 8 of 12 when pitch hitting for the Razorbacks, including 5 hits in a row for this team. How crucial is it? You're a big time hitter when you're in the majors. How crucial is it to have that kind of a bat with as high of batting averages he's hitting right now, coming out of the dugout and basically taking it over in those crucial spots?
Phil and I were talking earlier, and it's funny. It's the greatest thing you can have as a coach or as a team. It's the worst thing as a player because now you don't get to start because you're so valuable off the bench. So Charlie Welch doesn't get those starts, but it's so valuable to have a kid like that. I mean, pinch hitting's so difficult. You have no timing, no tempo. And in the big leagues, you can go right around the corner and hit in the cage. I don't know what the setup is there now, but, you really don't get any swings. And even if you do, you haven't faced a live pitcher, all game or with the last few days or whatever the case may be. And now all of a sudden you're asked to go in there and hit 95. It's just the timing's off. So what Welch is pulling off is pretty dramatic. And in fact, it's got to be, the best pinch hitting scenario in the country. A guy that can come off the bench and do what he does. And then, of course, get to a 2-0 count the other night against Nebraska. Then a fastball's coming, and you got to time that up. Sometimes you're over anxious, and as a pinch hitter, because again the timing's not there, and you'll roll over those type of pitches, even though it's a cookie. But he slammed that one, and it just shows that his timing is good. He's got a quick swing, so he doesn't need that kind of preparation and tempo when he comes to the plate.
It's a beautiful thing. That swing was absolutely beautiful when he took on Nebraska. I want to jump around the SEC with other regionals that are happening. You were covering Notre Dame earlier this week. Notre Dame, Mississippi State has a chance to be a great series in Stark Vegas this weekend. You put that alongside Tennessee and LSU, which is going to be an absolute barn burner. What are some of these regionals that you're looking at? Obviously, you're going to be focused more heavily on Arkansas and NC State, but what about some of these other SEC teams? I mean, there's some good matchups coming in these super regionals.
Yeah, there certainly is. Ole Miss, I'm pulling for. Mike Bianco was my coach at LSU back in the early 90s, so I'm hoping that they go out to Tucson, take care of business. Arizona can swing it. I think they're hitting like 330 as a team. I mean, so they can bash. But Ole Miss was one of the best hitting teams in the SEC as well, so that'll be a good one. Stark Vegas is finesse versus power. The Notre Dame starting pitchers pitch to contact. They're not going to get a lot of swing and misses. On the flip side, Mississippi State gets a ton of strikeouts. I think they average a little less than 13 strikeouts per game. And so State's going to be powerful coming at you. As you saw, Notre Dame had a huge offensive weekend, 3 games. They scored 50 runs. They hit 15 home runs. Nico Cavadas, their first baseman, hit 5 home runs, including a grand slam in the first inning of the UConn game. So they kind of feed off Nico. If Nico's striking out and missing and swinging, and he did have 8 strikeouts prior to those 5 home runs in a row, by the way. And so there's a lot of swing and miss in that swing by Nico. But as he goes, I think the offense goes. They can't be on riding a better high off of the regional going into Starkville. That'll be awesome. And then LSU, Tennessee, they played early in the year. Tennessee swept them, but it was a combined total of 4 runs, two one-run games and a 2-run game. I think 2 of them were walk-offs.
Mm-hmm.
But LSU walked 19 guys in that series, 19. So if they're putting guys on base, they're going to lose. Anybody in the country, you're walking people, you're going to lose. But if LSU can control their pitching staff and throw strikes in that series, I think you're going to see a little different result. That's going to be a battle. I think that'll go 3 games. But you saw Tennessee and how dramatic they are. They just seem to pull out wins. It's unbelievable how they do it. But they're calm and they keep their heartbeat down and late in the games when it's on the line. And so I love that about Tennessee is they kind of expect to win.
Before I throw it back over to Phil, Todd, I want to get your thoughts on your alma mater, LSU, going through the coaching search right now. Before we got you on, we've seen the reports that Pat Casey may be the leading candidate for the job. What's your thoughts? Who do you think they should go after? We've seen the rumors of maybe a Tony Vitello heading to LSU, leaving Tennessee, O'Sullivan from Florida. In a perfect world for you, who should take over those LSU Tigers?
I don't know a name, but I think a young kid with energy. That's my 2 main things. Some young guy that knows the game that has a lot of energy. And I think of Canizero. You remember him? He was at Mississippi State for a few years before he got in trouble. But that's a type of guy outside the getting in trouble part that I think they should go after. Pat Casey's been around. Certainly, he knows the game. We've heard rumors of Kevin O'Sullivan from Florida. But in all those cases, the first thing they do, Tony Vitello, is they go back to their own clubs. Because I know Tony, for example, is happy in Tennessee. But are you going to build me a new stadium? If you are, I'll stay. If there's no plans of doing that, then I got to look to go somewhere else. So that's the scenario that they're probably facing with all those situations. Remember, Tim Tadlock got a lifetime contract in Lubbock to stay. So Kevin O'Sullivan, for example, can go back to Florida and say, all right, give me a lifetime contract or I'm looking somewhere else. So those are the kind of conversations I think that go on with these coaches within their own programs because I think they're happy there. But if something happens where, it doesn't work out the way they'd like, they're in the driver's seat. Then they can go look somewhere else. But I did hear Pat Casey was on campus. I don't know if anybody has interviewed, but of course that's kind of a drag your feet type deal right now because we're still involved in the postseason and LSU's still in it.
Todd, last thing, and I'll let you go. Kevin Kopp should be the Golden Spikes winner this year. Should be the Dick Hauser Trophy winner this year. The only relief pitcher to ever win the Golden Spikes award is Darren Dreifert. And your 93 LSU national championship team beat his Wichita State team, if I remember correctly, in the national championship game. Of course, Dreifert was much more than just a relief pitcher. He was their DH and a slugger, and the dude could mash when he got to the big leagues. I remember watching him pitch and hit there. Did you hit against Darren Dreifert? Do you remember him as a pitcher?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he slung it. So I was a left-handed hitter against a right-handed Darren Dreifert. He would hit that outside corner on me with some serious movement at 94, 93 miles an hour, which back then was lightning. I remember hitting a bloop double down the left field line on him in that game. Yes, we did beat him in the national championship. Remember, back then it wasn't a series. It was just one game. And so we showed up Saturday at noon on CBS and beat Wichita State 8-0 behind Brett Laxton, who struck out 16, a record at the time in the national championship game. And we had a big day. But, yeah, Dreifert hit also. When you first said that was what I was going to say. He was a two-way player that hit home runs also. That's why he won the Golden Spikes. But back then there were a lot more of those guys. Brooks Kieschnick did it for Texas.
Yeah.
There were a few of those guys that would do it. Brendan McKay from Louisville is the last guy I heard that was a superstar on both sides of the plate. But Kopp certainly deserves a lot of recognition. There's no question. He got 31 appearances out of the pen through 185 last week. Basically carried Arkansas through the regional last weekend, and he's a huge, huge part of what they've done this year already, having not lost a series all year, winning the SEC championship, and just the small role he played in the SEC tournament, for example, where he comes in after the sixth inning and just mows everybody down. And I think he gave up a home run, but outside of that, nobody can touch him. It's just a valuable guy to have. So when you're talking about in terms of who means more to their team, I don't know if you can make an argument that anybody means more to their team than Kevin Kopp from Arkansas.
Todd, appreciate your time. We'll let you go.
Thanks, Todd.
Good luck in the lead up to the Super. Enjoy the broadcast, and appreciate it again. Thank you.
Thank you.